The big story tonight, President Biden's big message to West Point graduates, fight for democracy. Biden made the plea during the commencement address at West Point. Fox News senior correspondent Kevin Corke is at the White House tonight.
And good evening from the White House, where earlier today we all had a chance to watch President Biden address the cadets at the United States Military Academy at West Point. And he wrapped up his remarks in fairly short order, his remarks lasting overall right around 20 minutes. During his address to the cadets, the president spoke about the Russian invasion of Ukraine and U.S. service members providing support for the Ukrainians. He also said he was determined not to send U.S. soldiers into the country, but said the U.S. would continue standing against a man I've known for years, a brutal tyrant. That, of course, a reference to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Mr. Biden also challenged the graduates to fight to preserve democracy both here at home and abroad.
From the very beginning, nothing is guaranteed about our democracy in America. Every generation has an obligation to defend it, to protect it, to preserve it, to choose it. Now is your turn.
The president's remarks come at a time when he is really struggling in the polls, at least according to the latest Fox News swing state surveys, which show him trailing former President Donald Trump across the board: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, to say nothing of Nevada, which isn't even listed here. But the Biden campaign insists this is nothing to worry about right now.
We don't put any stock into polls. There are going to be polls that are up and down all across this election cycle. And so we're focused on doing the work. And part of that is communicating to voters exactly how dangerous Donald Trump is to democracy.
Meantime, the Biden-Harris campaign issuing a statement. It reads in part, in the month leading up to that first debate, the Biden-Harris campaign will zero in on Trump's dangerous campaign promises and unhinged rhetoric. We'll make sure that the voters who will decide this election are reminded of the chaos and harm Trump caused as president. As for the current commander-in-chief, no expectation of seeing him here at the White House over the weekend. Of course, he took a helicopter, Marine One, from West Point over to his beach house in Delaware. No surprise there, like a lot of Americans spending this holiday weekend at home. Back to you.
Kevin Corke at the White House, thank you so much. Now, before we get started and get going on our conversation here, I want to play one more little clip from this commencement address from the president. Take a listen.
America is the strongest when we lead not only by our example of our power, but by the power of our example. You can clap for that.
Miranda, let's peel apart that statement there. I mean, what are your thoughts when you hear him say that?
Well, my first thought is that he had to ask the audience to clap him. That's pretty sad. That's shades of Jeb Bush. And the applause was pretty minimal, so it didn't sound like it was a very receptive audience. And look, he's said that line, he says over and over, and it's not his original line. He lifted that from Bill Clinton when he was introducing Barack Obama back in 2008. So as usual, Joe Biden is lifting other people's words. You know, it's sort of hollow, I think, when it comes from a man who isn't leading the world very well.
Well, and you have to wonder, Jason, how many people are actually watching this address. I mean, we're talking about it here, but he repeated a story that he told the Naval Academy graduates back in 2022 about being appointed to the Naval Academy to play football that has been debunked.
Parenthetically, I was appointed by the fellow I ran against when I was 29 years old to the Naval Academy. I was one of 10. I wanted to play football. And the day I was supposed to go down for the interview, a classmate of mine who was also one of the 10 appointed to be chosen from, named Steve Dunning, came to pick me up. And I had found out 2 days earlier they had a quarterback named Roger Staubach and a halfback named Joe Bellino. I said, oh, I'm not going there. I went to Delaware. Not a joke.
Brilliant, Mr. President. So you had an appointment to go to West Point, and you decided not to. One of the best best institutions there is. So you made that brilliant decision. He was a wide receiver in high school, and he decides not to go to West Point because Roger Staubach, one of the most decorated quarterbacks in the history of the NFL and in college football, he went on to win the Heisman Trophy. Joe Biden, in his brilliance, said, "Oh, I wouldn't want to be the wide receiver for a Heisman Trophy winner." So he decides not to do that. And then he talks about this running back, Bellini, I think is his name. Bellini had graduated 4 years before Joe Biden even had a chance to go there. So he makes this stuff up. It's the second time he's gone to this story, and it's fundamentally not true. That's right. It's not true.
To be fair, Jason knows his football because I don't know if folks know this out there, but he was a kicker for BYU back in the day. Isn't that right? Oh, look at, what do we have
Kicker's
there?
not exactly a football player, but
you got to wear the uniform.
Throw a flag, but yeah, I do know a little bit about football. Yeah.
You look fantastic, so thank you very much. All right, so back to the topic at hand, I guess. Dr. Siegel, we also heard that Jen O'Malley, the campaign, the chief campaign, the campaign manager, has talked about their line of attack, what the plan is for the debate. So we're looking at, they're going to go after Trump, political violence, abortion bans, Affordable Care Act, Social Security, and Medicare. What do you think about that?
I think overall it's weak. Political violence, he's going to do what? Blame Trump for that when a lot of his wishy-washiness that's going on right now on college campuses, it may even be indirectly leading to political violence. He's one minute he's pro-Israel, the next minute he's pro-Palestinian. He's not coming out against any of the attacks on college campuses definitively. As far as abortion bans, he's going to blame Trump and say but Trump has not come out and said that he's for a national abortion ban. So he doesn't have a line of attack there because Trump is going to say it's down to the states and the Supreme Court ruled. The third part is ridiculous because Obamacare is costing a fortune. I've reported on that for years. Medicare and Social Security are going bankrupt by 2035 and no one's doing anything about it. Those are not strong lines of attack. Not to mention, by the way, almost forgot to say, 100,000 illegal migrants put on Obamacare under Biden.
Right. Yeah, and also, Miranda, it's hard not to look at this through the lens of some of those polls that Kevin Corke showed us when you're looking at those battleground states and how troubling it is for the Biden camp. Nate Silver, who's a pollster, tweeted this: "If Biden is still struggling in August, he needs to consider stepping aside. It's not a great situation for Dems either way, but you have to do due diligence on the question. It's an important election. Obviously, it shouldn't be taboo to talk about." We're talking about Democrats here. They don't like to talk about it.
It is taboo, but you hear them on their podcasts. The people like David Plouffe, they're panicking. They are really feeling very dark about their prospects, and they see that the plan that the Democrats had to destroy Donald Trump by tying him up with all these legal cases has backfired. If anything, Donald Trump's become stronger through these legal cases. And he's seen as someone who's put upon, if could happen to me, it happened to him. It's been an absolute bonanza for him. One thing I will say, note of caution for Republicans, those polls are still pretty close. And Joe Biden should be doing a lot worse considering his performance.
The problem that the Republicans have is that the Democrats are far superior in their organization in getting out the vote. They are far superior. It's not even close. And that should scare a lot of. But in terms of policy, cognitive capability, the ability to debate, the ability to get out and give a speech, we saw Donald Trump, do this amazing event in the Bronx. Tens of thousands of people show up. Could Joe Biden do that anywhere in this country? The answer is no.
Okay, just a reminder, these numbers that we're seeing are showing up this way and so tight in these battleground states while Donald Trump is stuck in New York. Well, he's not even out there in the way that he would be in a normal campaign.
And I want to say that I agree completely. And look, when Biden goes to West Point, he actually doesn't help himself because he's telling the military cadets, I've been there at 4 o'clock in the morning. You see these people going along with flashlights on their head. They're marching. They look like they're running. They know, military knows what they're supposed to do. Under the Bush doctrine, Bush said, you're for us or you're against us. He said, let's root out terrorism in countries that support it. That's what's happening right now, by the way. Is Biden saying anything about that? Is he saying anything effective when Iran attacks Israel? No.
You would think Joe Biden is going to spend the weekend in Delaware. He should be out on Memorial Day campaigning, but he doesn't have the energy to do it.
All right.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.